Good morning, Bourbon Bay. This is Steven, your host of Bourbon Bay Talks, and just joining you on this lovely morning here in bright, sunny South Florida, beautiful Tampa Bay, and finally getting some fall weather now that we actually have fall coming. So, yeah, I just wanted to talk to you guys today. We're going to do a lovely little history episode, this about the Civil War. And joining me today, as always, guys, we have our lovely little Wilderness Trail bourbon. Is going to be the bourbon that we discussed today. This is the Bottled and Bond Higher Rye Bill. And so, yeah, this company kind of came around in about 2006. The Shane family, and they were back in the 90s actually in a rock band, and decided that really quickly that they were going to actually need to change the style or change business careers. And so they decided to start, going into the roots, and were moved to the Danville, Kentucky, and were basically started the Wilderness Trail Distillery in 2006, as I said earlier. And yeah, their family actually has a long career in the history-making business, kind of dating back to the 1940s, where their grandmother, Doris Ballard, when she met her husband, Herbert Ballard, and they were actually starting to make whiskey for the Stitzer Weller Distillery there, in Kentucky, and worked there for about 50 years. So they do have a long history of distilling in their family. And yeah, and basically I've heard a lot of great stuff about it, and was able to pick up a bottle over at ABC Fine Wine and Spirits, and decided to, you know what, I'm going to try it myself, as we always like to do on the show. So we're going to definitely take it. Again, this was the... Oh, sorry, guys. I'm sorry about my voice. Went to the Lightning game last night, first regular season game for me, so it's a little raspy. Go Bolts. So this one happens to be, like I said, for its mash bill, it's about 69% corn. It's about 24% rye and 12% malted barley is what it is. And of course, it does follow the Bottled and Bond Act. So again, that was distilled by a single distiller in a single season, and was was put into a bonded warehouse and aged for at least 4 years. I believe they aged theirs for about 7, and it has to be bottled at least at 100 proof. So it does follow all the laws that are required for it to be called Bottled and Bond. So, and usually I always have some good experience with Bottled and Bond bourbons. So we're going to definitely give it a smell and nose it. Yeah, right off the way, you definitely get some nice butterscotch. And then you get, of course, some nice, almost a little bit of marshmallow. Of course, like with the higher ryes, I get a little bit more marshmallow in it. And yeah, so basically we definitely get more, and you kind of look at the color too. You definitely see a nice amber, which is typical of Bottled and Bond. Very nice amber color. So now we're going to do the taste. Yeah, and you definitely get some nice orange notes right off the bat, a little almost lime. And for 100 proof, it's definitely very nice and smooth. You almost kind of get a little bit of raisin in there, a little leather. So yeah, overall, definitely a very good bourbon. Highly recommend it. You definitely get that spice from the rye. So if you wanted to, let's say, use it for old fashions, Manhattans, it would definitely be a nice bourbon for that. even nice little sidecar, because it's going to come through, and it's not going to be hidden by a lot of the ingredients that you add into the cocktail. So it's definitely going to showcase well. And yeah, and that finish, get that little Kentucky hug. But yeah, and in that finish, you definitely get a little bit more of the spice. You get a little bit more cinnamon in there. So yeah, definitely highly recommend this. You can go pick it up at ABC, I think, and other local distillery or other retail stores. I know, like Total Wine, and of course, many of you are probably starting to find out now. Definitely go pick it up now, because yeah, we're not really sure what's going to happen supply-wise in the next couple of months, because as everybody's probably seen by now, you see all those ships waiting out in the harbors. I know Florida is trying to take some of that ease, and DeSantis is trying to bring some of those cargo ships down to Florida ports and to help out with the supply chain issues that are caused. But basically, biggest thing to tell you, if you want to have your bourbon, you want to have your spirits for the holidays, for any parties that you guys might be throwing, definitely go get it now, because they might not be there come November for, like, after Thanksgiving or before Thanksgiving. So yeah, this is definitely the time to go get your spirits so you can have it ready for your holidays and for any parties that you guys might throw. So definitely say go do that. But now, kind of getting into our favorite part of the show with the history. And this time we're going to talk about the Civil War and how whiskey played a huge role. Basically, kind of starting out that the Civil War, like the rest of the country, tore the whiskey making states apart. You have Pennsylvania, Kentucky, Maryland, which were the three big ones. Of course, Pennsylvania was slowly with the Union. No question that their loyalties lay with the North. But places like Kentucky and Maryland, they actually had slavery that was legal in their states, and they were on the border. And even though a lot of their politicians sided with the Union, and they did go towards supporting the Union and join the Union, many of its countrymen, many of the people that lived in the states, actually sided with the Confederacy and states' rights. And especially Kentucky, when, in the 1700s, they were actually shipping a lot of their whiskey, a lot of their product down to the South. And that was their big buyer. That was their big market, was the South. So many of them knew that this is where their loyalties lay. This is where they were selling most of their products. The Garvin brothers, who were Old Forester, they joined the Confederacy. The Weller sons of W.L. Weller joined the Confederacy, and many other Kentucky distilleries also joined the Confederacy as well, to fight for their rights, to fight for their big market. And, it's kind of the war went on, and whiskey started to play more and more of an important role because it was heavily used as an anesthetic. Because back then there wasn't too many anesthetics. There wasn't, like morphine. There wasn't, oxy and things like that you find today. Basically, the only things was quinine, and I know I'm going to pronounce this wrong, Landamen, were the only two that were really kind of used besides whiskey. Aspirin was invented in 1846, but it wasn't really used medicinally until about the end of the century, so well after the war. And so, yeah, basically this lovely little red liquor that we enjoy today was used as an anesthetic and to also basically help to calm the fears and to help soldiers deal with the carnage that they saw on a daily basis on the battlefield, fighting their own countrymen, and in a lot of cases fighting their own brothers and fathers. So this kind of helped, what you could say, help soothe their soul, and help them kind of forget about what they faced on a daily basis in the battle. And also during this time, Abraham Lincoln was forced to reintroduce the excise tax to help pay for the Union war effort. So kind of like what what they did for the Revolutionary War and what they did for the War of 1812. Again, whiskey was used to kind of help pay for the war effort and to help pay for the armed forces. So, not only did it help to soothe people's souls, to help get them through a pretty tough experience in the battles, because many of these battles were very bloody, and people were losing arms and legs. Doctors were basically pouring this over wounds to clean out the wound, and then also were putting it down the soldiers' throats to basically kind of knock them out in a sense, so that they could perform the seizures, which a lot of the time was just amputating the leg, amputating the arm. So that was basically battlefield medicine back then. And you definitely needed something strong to kind of help soldiers deal with it. And, and then, kind of like I was talking about in the last video, we said that the temperance movement was starting to make a major play, and then so there was still that major play with the temperance movement back in actually 1863. The Sons of Temperance went to the White House, and John Hayes, one of Abraham Lincoln's secretaries, was recording it. And the Sons of Temperance said that, of course, the Union was losing the battle or the war because of its intemperance, that soldiers were just getting too drunk. And Hayes was like, that's not true, because the Southern Confederacy, they drink more whiskey than we do, and even worse whiskey. And yet, they're kind of winning at this point. You had different perspectives kind of going on. And there was also that perspective too, is that, hey, the Union had a lot more money, so they were able to buy more whiskey. But actually, whilst the officers of the Union could purchase their own whiskey, the regular soldier, had to rely on daily rations. And actually, 30 years before the Civil War, the U.S. Army had stopped daily rations of whiskey, rum, any kind of alcohol. But yet, you still had commanders kind of during that time still give their soldiers some, a slug of whiskey to help them kind of cope with, like I said earlier, is to deal with the war. And they would try to find whatever way they could possibly do it. Whether it was to bringing basically they were bringing the they were trying to find ways to get whiskey wherever they could. So whether they had their families getting it to them, sneaking it past the guards, or they would visit local grog shops, or they, in one case back in 1864 during Christmas, an entire regiment drank bad whiskey all by themselves, about 15 gallons worth. And on the other side, the Confederacy, they had a hard time. They didn't have rations of whiskey or anything. They were trying not to waste the valuable grains that they had for whiskey. They were basically using that for food just to survive, just to get the necessities. And the Confederacy actually instilled prohibition on a state-by-state basis. And some states, were very complicit with it. Other states weren't so complicit with it. And you actually had instances where there was like a colonel from Georgia who was making his own whiskey, prohibition be damned, and trying to help his troops, get through this battle, to help encourage them. And the South was basically purchasing up as much whiskey as they could, so they could use it for medicine, to use it for Navy rations, or just to help the soldier get a medicinal boost to get through the day. And this is pretty well documented. There's actually a paper that came out in 1993 from Merville, who was an MD in Louisville, and he talked about how whiskey was used as medicinal purposes. Whiskey definitely played a major role in it. And one thing that you could definitely say the Civil War did was it really kind of whittled down the number of distilleries and distillers during that time, which of course, kind of played into the hands of the temperance. And even though Abraham Lincoln at one time was said to say that, when he was told that Ulysses S. Grant was getting drunk and was a drunker and was just not a good general, but yet he was winning wars, and he's like, be damned that's not true. Like, find me out what kind of whiskey he likes, and I'll send him more because it seems to be working. He seems to be winning the war. And then also Abraham Lincoln kind of liked it himself a little bit. I mean, more on the rye side. There's actually a story of him liking a brand called Old Overholt, and that was considered one of his favorite brands of whiskey, and maybe even General Ulysses S. Grant's as well. But basically, the war had a major effect, and whiskey also played a major role in the war effort, like it has for the rest of our country. So yeah, I mean, I hope you guys enjoyed our lovely history lesson. I love doing these. I love talking about how whiskey has played a role in our history and the development of our country. And yeah, if you guys like these, and one trivia question, if you could tell me, hey, what was Ulysses S. Grant's favorite whiskey? If you could find that and write it down in the comments. Definitely love to read comments from you guys and let me know. And if there's any other topics you guys want me to talk about, definitely put them down in the comments. And as always, guys, hope you subscribe if you like the content. And as Uskabehe to life, and cheers. And I want to also thank my sponsors, Higher Order Smokers and Loaded Cannon Distillery. I'll definitely be putting their information at the description of the video. And definitely go check them out, guys. Highly recommend them. So hope you have a great day, and cheers.